He's
no,
like,
he comes and shows up to campus.
He just shows up. It's like a speaker's corner thing in Hyde Park in London.
Right.
He just shows up. And if the school doesn't like him, they should just, look, I'm a freedom of speech guy, but if I were the college president and Uncle Jed, I'd put him right back with the Clampetts. He'd be right out of there. Okay?
Sounds like a safe space, Bill.
There have been lots of talk lately about universities establishing safe spaces, and conservatives have rightly mocked these liberals as snowflakes who are asking for these safe spaces. You know, the world is full of opposing opinions, of contrary thoughts, of offensive speech, and you can't melt like a snowflake every time you encounter someone else's worldview that you don't agree with. Now, universities are supposed to be the marketplace of ideas. If debating and discussion belongs anywhere, it belongs on a university college campus. Normally, I like Bill O'Reilly, but you'll see in this clip, he basically melted like a snowflake, saying that conservative Christian free speech should not be allowed on a university college campus. Now, granted, Bill went to Harvard, which is a private university, and we're talking about public universities, but still, you should recognize that free speech applies to everybody, even if they're anti-gay or anti-abortion or anti-fornication. No matter what their speech is, it's protected under the Constitution. So watch this clip and you'll basically see Bill melting like a snowflake, telling people that the entire campus should be a safe space.
I think that Marianne is probably referring to one of the students complained about a man named Brother Jed, who goes around not just to NAU, but to campuses all over Arizona. I remember seeing him when I was in college at the University of Arizona. He doesn't just say anti-gay things. He says anti-straight people things. He says horrible things. But you know what? He serves as a good example of how you don't want to be, and because students are exposed to those ideas, they can look at that and say,
but the schools don't bring him in.
He's no, like, he comes and shows up to campus.
He just shows up. It's like a speaker's corner thing in Hyde Park in London.
Right.
He just shows up. And if the school doesn't like him, they should just, look, I'm a freedom of speech guy, but if I were the college president and Uncle Jed, I'd put him right back with the Clampetts. He'd be right out of there. Okay?
Sounds like a safe space, Bill.
No, I don't want any disruption. And if this guy's a nut and he's saying
outside class in the public square, he's just saying nonsense on the public square at a public university.
You want to do it? You can do it in the middle of town.
It's a public university. Bill, they can say the same thing about you. They don't like what you say, you get kicked out. There's a public safety component.
I'm not sympathizing with the snowflakes. I'm saying there's an appropriate way to handle it. Marianne gets the last word.
You know, the purpose of the First Amendment, or the constitutional protection of free speech, is to protect offensive speech, speech that other people don't want to hear, speech that people want to try and shut down. That's the kind of speech that needs constitutional protection. If the only speech that's allowed is speech that everybody likes, then you don't need a constitutional protection of it. And so what we have to understand is that free speech applies to everybody, no matter what their opinion, no matter what their worldview, no matter what their religious perspectives are. Free speech protects all of us, and it's for the good of society. In order to have a free society, you need to have freedom of thought. In order to have freedom of thought, you need to have freedom of speech. And so someone should be allowed on a public campus to go and to start preaching against homosexuality, to start preaching against fornication, to preach whatever they want to preach, because that's necessary to have a free society. But you see this clip with Bill, and he basically said the whole campus should be a safe space. I mean, he melted like a snowflake because Brother Jed shows up on campuses and preaches against homosexuality and fornication. And Bill says we should just kick Brother Jed off campus. He shouldn't be allowed on campus. Well, what Bill O'Reilly is doing is shooting himself in the foot. Because what if he goes to a campus and other people don't like it, other people label it as hate speech, other people want to kick him off campus? By his own standard, he should be kicked off campus because someone else says that, his speech shouldn't be allowed. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. Free speech needs to apply to everybody. A university, college campus, any public space needs to be open to freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Otherwise, you're just under the tyranny of someone else who says this speech should be allowed, but not that speech. This speech is acceptable, but that speech is hate speech. We shouldn't allow this person to talk, but we can allow this person to talk. And then you become thought police, and then you're living under a tyrannical society rather than a free society. And so I'm glad that that woman on Bill's show stood up for free speech and stood up for free speech on university, college campuses, and said, look, he's not a danger to anybody. He's just sharing his thoughts, sharing his opinions outside of the classroom. That's perfectly good and acceptable and should be tolerated and allowed everywhere across the country. So leave a comment on this video. What kind of speech do you think should be allowed, and what kind of speech do you think should not be allowed? Obviously, crying fire in a crowded movie theater, if there is no fire, is not allowed, or inciting a riot, telling people to go and riot, telling people to go and blow up the White House, telling people to do these things, that's not free speech either. But, when you get into this question of hate speech, if you speak against homosexuals, that's considered hate speech. Or what if you speak against Christians? Is that hate speech? If you speak against Islam, that's considered Islamophobia. But if you speak against Christianity, that's considered intellectualism. And so you get into these questions of hate speech and what speech should and shouldn't be allowed. It should all be free. So leave a comment in the comment section of this video of where do you think the line is? Should hate speech be illegal? Should hate speech be allowed? What is this so-called hate speech anyways?